Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi, Sri Bala Nadasan, Dr. Mawalal Chatrugan, Mr. Toki Mohoto, Sri Piyush Khandedwal, on behalf of Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Devon, I'd like to welcome all of you on our first episode of Samarpan Yatra, means a journey of devotion. Today's program is about a journey of Divine Life Society. This is an organization that is a humanitarian organization that plays a large role in helping disadvantaged communities in Devon and surrounding areas. They have built schools in Wamashu, and they have also have the feeding scheme in many areas in South Africa. Today we have Mr. Toki Mohoto, who is an author and culturalist who has visited Divine Life Society to discuss about the success of Divine Life Society and the difficulties that the organization has faced through their journey. He is having discussions with two senior members of Divine Life Society, which is Sri Bala Nadasan. Sri Bala Nadasan is a retired principal and a devotee of almost 60 years with Divine Life Society. He serves on various committees of the society. And also we have Dr. Mawalal Chatrugan, who is a retired acting director of examination and assessment in KwaZulu-Natal Department of Education. He is a devotee of society for more than 48 years. He has served on various committees and is also integral to society activities. So now we'd like to welcome Toki Mohoto and the team. Over to you, Toki.
Om Shri Satguru Paramatmane Namah. Om Shri Satguru Paramatmane Namah. Om Shri Satguru Bhagavan Shivanandaye Namah. Om Shri Satguru Bhagavan Shivanandaye Namah. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Jnanamulam Gurur Murti, Pujamulam Gurur Padam, Mantramulam Gurur Vakyam, Mokshamulam Gurur Kripa, Mokshamulam Shivananda Kripa. Shine.
COVID-19 protocols, we're going to wear our masks, but for the purposes of the interview, we're going to remove them. All right. Mr. Bala, can you tell us about the Divine Life Society of South Africa, its history, its vision, and perspective?
Good morning, Toki. Good morning to our viewers also. Let me first say that today is a very auspicious day. Today, the 15th of December 2020, is actually the day when Swami Sahajananda attained Mahasamadhi. It means that he shed his mortal coil, he passed away. So it's now 13 years today, according to the Sanskrit calendar, that he passed away. And if you're talking about the history of Divine Life Society, no history of Divine Life Society of South Africa would be complete if we do not include the life of Puja Swamiji, that's how we refer to him reverentially, Puja Swamiji, who was the central figure of Divine Life Society, and everything revolved around him. He was a God-realized sage and well known throughout Africa and abroad. Now, coming back to the question of the history, Puja Swamiji always told us that the present status of Divine Life Society, its growth and development, is due entirely to the grace of the Divine Master, Sri Swami Shivananda. Also, Swamiji reminded us that Divine Life Society is unique in that it was founded by a spiritual master who forced his disciple, that's the word I'm using, forced his disciple, a disciple being Swami Sahajananda, to follow his instructions to start the Divine Life Society. Of course, it must be said that Divine Life Society in South Africa will not exist, would not have existed, if it wasn't for Puja Swamiji's deep spiritual yearning to unite with the Divine. And so, having awakened this desire to lead a spiritual life, Swamiji went to India and met his spiritual master, Swami Shivananda, who then said to him, the first instructions, strange as it may be, the first instructions was, learn to type and to make tea. Yes, Swamiji didn't think that it was a shallow instruction, that he should be getting instructions on yoga and meditation and the like on Hinduism and scriptures. So he accepted that very passively. And later, very much later, Swamiji realized that learn to type had a symbolic meaning. It meant type and disseminate the knowledge of spiritual literature, and make tea, apart from being hospitable, make tea is to serve the disadvantaged communities in this country. And so that's how it started. And Swamiji, of course, was then in the beginning stages living in Foza, the TB settlement. And he was a teacher there. And Swami Shivananda wrote to him in 1949 and said, start a branch of the Divine Life Society there. And Swamiji then, in those days, not later, but in those days, he was shy, he was nervous, and he was unaccustomed, as he himself said, to any organizational work. So he was silent. Swami Shivananda, of course, was not deterred by this. He wrote 2 letters, and he said in the last letter, kindly start a branch of the Divine Life Society. I recognize you as a secretary. That put him in a fix. So what does he do? So he sent the affiliation fee. But being Swamiji, the introvert, he mused over his fate and said, how am I going to manage this Divine Life Society? And he said, Gurudev, referring to Swami Shivananda, Gurudev, if this organization succeeds, it is your will. If it fails, it is also your will. So that spirit of surrender was there from the very beginning. Perhaps one may say that because Swamiji had surrendered to the Divine Master, the Divine Life Society had made such phenomenal success over this last 71 years. So Swamiji was at Foza and then decided that we must move premises because now we're starting to buy machines to print. And we moved to 47 North Street, and a few people came over to help Swamiji. And when Swamiji went the second time to India, he met Swami Shivananda, who said, See this hospital here? It is half built. I'm putting all my money in the printing press. Swamiji said, that's my cue. That means I must now learn to type, as he said, and disseminate. So that's how it started. And in 47 North Street, they had the printing machine and they had the typesetting machine. And in those days, the laborious types, you had to put it into a plate. And so devotees came and worked till early hours of the morning. And Toki, you won't believe this. That's why we are so grateful to these pioneers. They joined Swamiji and stayed there for the night, slept on the floor with a newspaper as a mattress, and a pillow was the brick. That's the hardship they went through. And then for food, they had a kitchen, which they renovated the toilet, cleaned it up, and used that as a kitchen. So those were the hard days, and we are eternally grateful to these pioneers who led such a life, and it's now our turn to walk in their noble footsteps. So Swamiji started, and then Divine Life Society grew and grew because of his purity. And so we needed a bigger press, and we moved here into Reservoir Hills. And here again, the Divine Life Society grew, and through the management committee, they bought modern printing equipment. In fact, today we have up-to-date modern printing equipment that can compare with any press in South Africa. And so we printed large volumes of books, beautiful books that went to all parts of the country, and it went abroad. Of course, Swamiji, a time had come when he was getting old now, and he was 82 years old, and he decided it is time for me to leave. So after a short illness that was in December 2007, he shed his mortal coil, and he left instruction that his body must be cremated and immersed in the sacred Ganges River, which is in India. Of course, the work of Divine Life Society continued through the blessings of Swami Shivananda and Swami Sahajananda, and the 18 branches that we had at that time continued to work to promote all our service activities. And apart from the 18 branches and the ashrams, we also have, well, this institution here, the Shivananda Ghat, which disposes of the cremated ash in a dignified manner. We have the huge complex in La Mercy on the north coast of Natal, KZN, the Shivananda International Cultural Center, and we have the Shivananda Sunlit Park Center, which caters for the needs of children and adults who have a drug addiction and other social ills. So that's where we stand with the general history of Divine Life Society of South Africa.
Thank you so much. That's a mouthful. Dr. Manwala, could you also reflect on the values which have sustained the past 71 years, and the contributions that you've made in society?
Thank you, Toki. The society is built on the principles and teachings of Sri Swami Shivananda. Swami Shivananda says, serve, love, give, purify, meditate, and realize. So these simple yet very profound words form the basis of all that we do. Some of our activities are prayer services, which is a fundamental aspect of Divine Life Society, and this is on a daily basis at all our ashrams and regularly at our branches. As we mentioned, we have 18 branches throughout the country, in Cape Town, Gauteng, and in KwaZulu-Natal. Some of the other activities that we participate in are distribution of spiritual literature and knowledge. These are through the books that are printed at our Shivananda ashrams, Reservoir Hills and La Mercy. All the printing is done in-house, and the distribution is through our fundraisers and our devotees as well as branches. So the strong spiritual and moral values are espoused through the writings of Sri Swami Shivananda. He was a phenomenal author, having authored more than 250 books. So we don't even have one book title to our credit. Here is a giant who has had 250 more books or more books. In addition, we focus strongly on youth development. We have regular yoga camps and our Shivananda Academy, which are geared towards dissemination of spiritual and moral values. Side by side, we look at the overall growth of the youth and children because they are the future of mankind. A very important aspect of the Society's work is poverty alleviation. Now, it was in 1974 that Pujya Swamiji, in consultation with government at that time, wanted to send money to India to help with the poverty there. But he had this feeling that Sri Swami Shivananda was telling him that Africans in South Africa are suffering and you better do something for them. He then embarked on the school building projects. The first school was in Maslabatini in the Urundi region, and thereafter there was a rapid building of schools, creches, old age homes, a very large medical center at Tambanana near Mpangeni. The Shivananda Technical High School in Pomashu is a flagship project of the Society, and throughout the length and breadth of KwaZulu-Natal we have our projects. Now, to date, the projects total over 600. Now, this is a phenomenal piece of work that the Society does, and all through the inspiration of Sri Swami Sahajananda and Pujya Swami Sri Gurudev and Pujya Swami Sahajananda. We also have a daily feeding program which goes on every school day, and on a daily basis we feed 3,000 and more children. This center, the Shivananda Cart, as we mentioned, is a center where we dispose of the mortal remains or the ashes of the deceased. On the first of every month, we have what is called the All Souls Day prayer service or satsang. Here we pay tribute and homage to all those who have departed, because we are aware that the souls are going through a profound period of stress and turbulence, and this All Souls Day prayer helps create some degree of peace and bliss in the soul itself. On that day also, we engage in poor feeding in the name of all departed souls, and we feed approximately 2,000 individuals on that day, apart from our regular poor feeding of school children in the different areas. So in a nutshell, this is the ethos of Divine Life Society of South Africa: the printing and dissemination of spiritual literature, service activities, regular prayer services, youth development, growth, and the expansion of moral, spiritual, and ethical values throughout. Now, some of the other activities we've engaged in is the participation in the Parliament of World's Religions. This is held every 4 or 5 years in different parts of the world, and on the instruction of Pujya Swami Sahajananda, the Society has been participating in these Parliaments of World's Religions since 1999. The primary objective of our participation is the distribution of the teachings of Sri Swami Shivananda. The first Parliament was in 1999 in Cape Town. Then in 2004 it was in Barcelona, Spain. In 2009 it was in Melbourne. 2015 in Salt Lake City, and in Toronto, Canada in 2018. And the Society has spread the teachings of Sri Swami Shivananda through the Parliament to many, many parts of the world. And in so doing has created a spiritual renaissance.
Thank you so much. Mr. Pala, surely this work and the past successes of the 71 years didn't come without any challenges. Highlight a few that you've come across and what implementations or other interventions you've had to sustain the successes that you've had.
Yes. As far as the projects are concerned, in the beginning, we had to go, as Dr. Mewalal said, we had to go to the deep rural areas, and access to those areas was virtually impossible. And our trucks got stuck in the mud, and there were all kinds of problems. So that was our first challenge. And Swami Sahajananda, whose whole life is characterized by faith and devotion, said, God will take care of everything. And so, true to that, someone came forward and said, I will transport all your building materials free of charge. So that challenge was taken care of. Of course, what I should have said right at the beginning is the challenge of Divine Life Society is really a spiritual one. Because being a spiritual organization, our goal is one of God realization, where the individual soul unites with the divine. And so the biggest challenge is we ourselves, that we must constantly stay focused and have this goal in our mind to conquer our lower nature, to analyze ourselves, to purify ourselves, and to go towards God. Swami Sahajananda said many years ago, after about 30 or 40 years of leading the spiritual life, he said, I realize now that the only person I can change in my life is myself. So we too, the only persons that we could change is ourselves. And that is a daunting task. So I must emphasize that is our first challenge. Of course, we have other challenges now with modern technology, and many of our youth starting to go internet-wise and going through their tablets, and they are not keen to pick up a hard copy of a book. So the society realized that we need to lure them, we need to attract them, we need to give them what they want, what they will enjoy. So we started uploading all our reports and all our magazines onto the website, which is www.sivananda.co.za. I think I got that right. So then we did that, and then we found also that people are so busy, especially in Johannesburg, going to work and back, leaving early in the morning and coming late at night, and they were not reading. So reading was a problem, they were not reading. So we devised two things. One, we prepared an audio book, a Shivananda audio book, volume 1, which contains all the inspiring messages and articles. So they play that in their cars, and they are exposed to the sublime Vedic teachings of the Divine Master and other authors whilst they are driving. And also, we have many CDs, the bhajans and kirtans, which are Hindu hymns, of course, and they listen to that. And again, it relieves stress. While somebody is hooting behind you and somebody is shouting, you are driving and listening to the bhajans and kirtans. So we've had many, many reports. Thank you for the CD. I play that in my car. It is so sublime. It is so inspiring. So we're able to overcome that challenge. Of course, today the challenge of, we still have to print books, of course. And the challenge is who's going to read it. So we hit upon an idea that we must choose the right books for the people to read. And Dr. Mewalal just told you about Yoga for Health. It was one book that we published in 2018. It was a real seller, if I may use that word, in Toronto. People absorbed those books. They started reading because it deal with pranayam, breathing. It's to deal with yoga postures, to deal with meditation, is to deal with health. And they wanted to know every human being is selfish. He wants to know about himself and how can I improve my health. So that book catered for his needs. Then, of course, years ago, we distributed in 1991, that time, we distributed a book called Enlightened Education, free of charge. 30,000 went first to the schools. And why this was popular and why they started reading is because the book contained articles, chapters on how to develop memory for students, how to develop the willpower, how to eradicate negative qualities, how to overcome depression. I mean, today we have lots of children who are suffering from depression. So those books were readily taken up and they read it. And then more recently we printed a booklet called Divine Life for Junior Children in Soto and isiZulu. And there was English and isiZulu, English and Soto. And these books contained moral values, and it was our intention to inculcate these virtues in the young and tender and impressionable minds. And if they stay in the minds of children, I think it was Sigmund Freud who said, give me the child for the first 6 years, and what I can do with him, you will not be able to do after that. So our intention was to try and do something in the first few years. Just as an aside, Winston Churchill said, my education came to a standstill at the age of 6 when I went to school. So we are saying, let's get this into the child now, and when he becomes an adult, he'll have all those moral values that will fortify him, that will strengthen him. So those were the challenges, selecting the books. Also a challenge these days is the fact that many people, because of materialism, they are drifting away from spiritual life, from religious life. So we set about planning what we call Hindu Dharma campaigns, where we help them to have a deeper understanding of Hinduism, a deeper understanding of themselves. And like that, more and more people are not swayed, they are firm in their beliefs. So those are some of the challenges. Of course, I must also admit that two more challenges, if I may. Our youth, who are the future of the society, are moving, many of them are moving to Johannesburg. So we have a depleted set of youth. But of course, we have overcome that through the modern technology, through online, and we're getting our youth now more and more involved and assuming positions of responsibility in different spheres of the society. And then one last challenge that we have is the Sunlit Path program. I should have told you that the Sunlit Path program was designed by Puja Swami Sahajananda in 2006, when he was so concerned about children taking drugs, alcohol, children getting depressed, children committing suicide. So our first challenge was to go to the school to enlist their support to take part in the workshop. But many of the schools, with due respect to them, were suspicious. You guys are coming to convert our children. I'm sorry, we're not coming. So it took much effort to show them a letter from the Department of Education to say, this program is non-denominational. We'll make you a better Hindu, we'll make you a better Muslim, we'll make you a better Christian. So that was a challenge, and we seem to have, to some extent, not completely, overcome that. Another challenge, still with the Sunlit Path program, was the fact that whilst we had the program, oh, they're so happy, they're so impressed, thank you, this, that. Now, we want this program to sustain itself. You go home, you continue. And we have a checklist where it's a process of developing your personality, growth, strengthening your virtues, eradicating your vices. So there's a checklist where you tick, today I did not smoke, so I put a tick. Today I spoke a lie, I put a cross. And we found that as the days go by, you will have more ticks than crosses. But the sad thing is, the challenge is that many of these learners are not taking that Sunlit Path checklist seriously. So that is a challenge. Now you may ask, so how to overcome that? I must honestly say that we are the guilty party. If we do those checklists ourselves regularly, it will impact on them. And perhaps they will also do it. So the fault is also ours.
Thank you so much. Dr. Manola, we live in a time where, due to COVID and other emerging threats, have made most of our youths a bit anxious, a bit uninterested in perhaps spirituality. They're more focused on materialism because everyone wants to survive. How do the Hindu principles propounded by the center, as well as the inspiration from Swamiji, allow your developmental interventions to allow the youth to find a healthy balance between the two, both spirituality and materialism?
That's a very profound question, yes. Actually, the COVID pandemic has created havoc throughout the world. And no doubt our activities have suffered to some extent. But as we mentioned earlier, our youth play an integral role in all our activities. They are on various subcommittees. For example, the IT committee, the satsang committee, which is a prayer committee, projects committee. They go out on projects to check on the progress of our buildings and how they unfolding, make inputs, etc. Now, they also play an integral role in our yoga camps. The yoga camp is a program held on the third Sunday of every month at our Shivananda International Cultural Center in La Mercy, where the day begins in the morning with prayer and meditation, chanting, likhit japa, the writing of mantra, prayer, study of the scriptures, and engagement on topics of aesthetic, moral, social, and cultural values. Topics like management of finances, cultivation of virtues, coping with the challenges of modern society, coping with the challenges of youth. Actually, Swami Shivananda has written a book entitled Coping with the Challenges of Youth. Then there is another book that is written, is called Sure Ways for Success in Life and God Realization. So these texts form the basis of discussion, and the youth engage and present talks with thoughts and ideas and excerpts from the passage to the general congregation and to other youth. So it is a development of youth by the youth themselves. In terms of our prayer services, we had to go online, and our youth are also involved in some aspects of that. And we are happy to report that since April this year until the end of November, the online views in terms of persons tuning into the prayer services exceeded 103,000. So indirectly, the COVID pandemic has brought people closer to God, and the youth also are part of this 103,000 and over population. So we are happy that they are contributing in a meaningful and profound way in all these aspects of development. We also have the Shivananda Academy, where children and youth participate, similar to the yoga camps, but decentralized at branch level. So we ensure a healthy development of mind, body, and soul in the overall development of the child. Swami Shivananda called the child a spiritual darling, a concept or a term that we've never heard in the past. But this is such a profound definition, spiritual darling, because every soul is potentially divine, and there is divinity in the child as well. And they, being the future hope of mankind, if groomed properly with spiritual and moral values, we feel will grow into good human beings who will add value to society in the overall development of things.
Thank you so much. Mr. Bala, obviously, whilst you've generously mentioned the challenges that you faced, that doesn't go without saying that they've been tangible successes.
Yes.
How do you sustain these successes? One, looking at succession planning, where the youth need to take over the baton, and number two, ensuring that the work that you've started continues in the same stream with more success in the years to come.
Yes, thank you. That's a very nice question. Dr. Mewalal spoke to you about the youth. We are already, movement is afoot, where we got them to go out to inspect the various projects. So that's the first thing I must say. And as far as the building is concerned, in the early days, much of the work was done on a voluntary basis. It can't be done today because people need money. And so we have many companies now who are doing work for us, and they're being paid to do the work. So the work continues, but on a different level. I must say that we have all those projects, those social projects that Dr. Chaturvedi spoke about earlier, is now continuing at a rapid pace. I must say also that Swami Shivananda said, I'll try and remember exactly what he said. He said, I cannot stop writing. I will write until I become blind. If I am blind, I will get someone, I will dictate to them, and someone will write for me. And so I will continue with my mission of dissemination of spiritual literature till the end of my life. The successes that we've had is that we've printed scores of books which went internationally, as Dr. Chaturvedi mentioned earlier. Books like What Becomes of the Soul After Death. In fact, that book here in these premises are taken up because they are psychologically predisposed. They've lost somebody. They want to read about it. Then we've had a book called Yoga Lessons for Children, which covers every gamut of Hinduism and also academic side of developing the memory and the willpower and various social topics. And that book, believe it or not, was sold, I shouldn't use the word sold, but distributed to schools throughout KZN and Gauteng. So there was a tremendous success with the book sales. So much so that letters started pouring into the society. Thank you for this, thank you for the book, because it changed me. One book that you would like to know about is the Peace Series. Right in front of you, you'll see a little poster there on the floor. That poster, it comes from the Peace Series. And when the Peace Series started, Swami Sahajananda said, it was like a hole was in my head and all that knowledge was pouring into my head. And so, we must know that those are writings coming directly from God. And it is no small wonder that people said, I was having problems with my mother-in-law. After I read this book, I am a changed person. I was having a problem with my marriage. After I read this book, and so on and so forth. So there were tremendous successes in, as far as the literature is concerned. As far as the Sangat path concerned, we've reached out to 70 schools now in KZN, and more than 4,000 children, well, they're called, for political reasons, they're called learners now. So more than 4,000 learners have signed a pledge form to stay away from drug addiction, or rather to try to stay away from drug addiction, alcoholism, to live a life free from depression and tension and the likes. And so every quarterly, we post them a magazine called Samarpan, and they are reading it, and we've got reports from the schools where the teachers from right living teachers, it's called something else now, remember that? Life orientation skills. The teachers say to us, you know, this child came to me and said, ma'am, say, what does this mean? I read this in the Sangat path. So that is what we consider the success. So like that, you can go on and on. Divine Life had, whilst it had its challenges, it had any one number of successes. Successes as far as the satsang is concerned. We used to have at La Mercy, the prayer hall would take a little more than 2,000, almost 3,000, and it used to be packed to capacity at our satsang. That is a success. So, like that, Dr. Melvaral can allude to various other things that were successful in Divine Life Society. But I must say, Toki, that for all this, we firstly have to say thank you to Swami Shivananda, who started the Divine Life Society 71 years ago, who wrote 250 books, as we already said, and he wrote it in English. Imagine if he wrote it in Hindi. You and I would not be sitting here. And he wrote it because he wanted to reach out to the masses throughout the world, not only abroad, but even in India. When he wrote, there were people who were turning their nose up against their own culture. And so when they started reading about the glories of their own religion, they came back to South Africa. They came back to India and started following Hinduism. And here in South Africa, we are grateful because we have an excellent leader in Swami Sahajananda, a God-realized person who was a very epitome of dignity, humility, sincerity, name it all, he had it. And we are all inspired. If you take any divine life person, you will say, we are inspired by the noble example of Swami Sahajananda. Of course, they say it's easy to live with a saint in heaven, but it's hell on earth. Now, Swamiji was very, very keen to make sure that we also make that progress. So Dr. Mevalal will tell you that Swamiji descended upon us with fire and brimstone to put us right. As I said earlier, we ourselves are the challenge. Yes. And Swamiji was there constantly prodding us to kindle and awaken in us that desire for God realization. So we cannot say thank you adequately. We are deeply grateful and indebted to Swami Sahajananda.
Definitely. Having heard of the many successes that the center has had, what aspirations do you have? Let's juxtapose this against when you first started here, the world or the state that we are in now in the world, as well as the future that you foresee for the center.
In terms of future growth and development, it is the intention and the divine will of Sri Swami Shivananda and Puja Swami Sahajananda that the society grows from strength to strength. And since Puja Swami Sahajananda's Mahasamadhi, when he left his mortal body in 2007, to date, the society is continuing with every facet of the work of the society. Just to give you an example, this year we have had the COVID pandemic, and we had to look at new strategies, new ways of spreading our service activities to suit the times. And we partnered with an organization to assist 3 local hospitals to fight the pandemic. And these are the Shivananda Wentworth Flu Clinic, the Shivananda King Dinizulu Screening Center, and the Shivananda R.K. Khan Screening Center. These centers, screening centers, are working very, very well in trying to cope with the challenge of our time, namely the pandemic. Then also to cope with the challenges of this time and to continue with the legacy of Sri Swami Shivananda and Puja Swamiji, we've assisted various organizations doing work in the pandemic. For example, the Gift of the Givers, the SPCA, CROW, which is also doing excellent work with animal rehabilitation and protection. Then the Dolphin Coast Hospice. We've looked at poverty alleviation at a very grassroots level, and this we've been doing from the time the society came into being 71 years ago. That is distribution of food, as I mentioned, the sandwiches to school children. This year, during the pandemic alone, we've distributed over 7,000 grocery hampers to needy families. Each hamper will sustain a family of 4 for about a month. Now, if you translate that into actual figures, it is about 1 million people who have benefited in terms of having a meal over a month. So this will continue for eternity as far as the society is concerned. The social activities, the poverty alleviation activities will continue. This printing and distribution of spiritual knowledge, that is the writings of Sri Swami Shivananda, and our prayer services will grow from strength to strength. We are in the process of looking at a new branch, an ashram in Gauteng, that is in Baklu. This is run by our very, very energetic band of young devotees who have relocated largely to Gauteng because of job reasons, etc. And that project is about to take off. They are doing excellent work, just as our branches. Our branches and our devotees are the pillars of our work, and we owe a large debt of gratitude to them for their Guru Bhakti, which is love and devotion to the Guru and the mission. And for that we are eternally grateful to our Divine Master, Sri Swami Shivananda and Puja Swami Sahajananda. Side by side, the work in the Sunlit Path program, assistance to youth, development, molding of children for overall spiritual, moral, and cultural education will grow from strength to strength.
Thank you so much. Concluding remarks is if you are talking to the youth and you're saying to them, we may need to pass the baton, but these are the things you need to know. This is the world you live in, and these are principles and values you need to carry forward.
Yes, we've actually already passed the baton. And fortunately, we're now in a position of strength and experience where we could say to them, see, you don't do it this way. This is how you do it. If you do it that way, these are the problems. We are very fortunate in that our youth are receptive, they're sincere, and they work in earnestness. So that's our appeal to them now, is to follow in the footsteps, not in our footsteps, but to follow in the footsteps of Swami Sahajananda, who strained every nerve, muscle and tissue, who gave his every drop of blood for the society. We are saying to them, if we want to become like Swami Sahajananda, then we must do our work properly, we must be committed, we must be able to contribute to this country by way of poverty alleviation, by way of lifting up the literacy levels, and by contributing to the economy of the country in various ways. And for that to happen, we must be dedicated. I must say in conclusion though, Toki, that I want to pay homage to the pioneers who started now more than 71 years ago, who didn't have the facilities that we had. They made tremendous sacrifice and bore hardships. And today, Divine Life Society is what it is because of all those devotees who joined Swami Sahajananda to form Divine Life Society. I'll give you some examples. There were people who used to take 2 buses to come to Reservoir Hills, work here, and then go back home, taking 2 buses. There was one particular person who used to come straight from work, come into the printing press, and work in the guillotine machine, chopping up the paper, and work till 11 o'clock every night. And so like that, people worked cleaning the ashram, working in the press, burning free of charge the ordinary labor, not the skilled labor, and they occupied various posts in Divine Life Society on a voluntary basis. So to them, my concluding remarks is, I say to them, thank you very much for what you have done. We will try and follow in your footsteps. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Concluding remarks, Dr. Manara?
Thank you, Toki. We must also mention that we have in our society renunciates, that is young and senior devotees who have renounced the material world and they've given up everything to serve the mission. They stay at our ashrams and do meaningful work in the society, in various departments, and promoting the ethos and the aims and objectives of the society. We are quite sure that the society is going to grow from strength to strength, and as mentioned by Mr. Balanadesan, the pioneers have set the platform and the baton has already been passed, and it is to the youth who are the future hope of the society to take the mission forward. And we want to wish them well and thank them for their sterling efforts. Actually, the youth and the general public have realized that accumulation of material values, wealth, degrees, etc. are not the be-all and the end-all of life. As Swami Shivananda, who was a medical doctor, served in Malaysia, at that time Malaya, and then returned to India because of his deep yearning for a higher life. That is peace, inner peace, contentment, and spiritual enlightenment. And this is what we should all aspire to. So side by side with our material and academics pursuits, let us not forget that there is a higher goal. And if we can, live a balanced life and serve unstintingly, then we will all, in our own small way, make the world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Dr. Manala as well as Mr. Bala from the Divine Life Society of South Africa. We were interviewing for the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center in Durban as well as the Consulate General of India. Thank you so much.
Namaste. On behalf of Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban, it gives me a great pleasure today to deliver a vote of thanks on our first episode of Samarpan Yatra, meaning journey of devotion. I'd like to thank Mr. Bala Nadesan, Dr. Mawalal Chatragun, Mr. Toki Mohoto, for conducting such a sterling discussions about Divine Life Society. We all know that all institutions under the globe today, they are facing so many challenges. But today we are fully aware that Divine Life Society were not exempted from difficulties, but even though there were difficulties, they managed to go through. To Director of Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi, I'd like to thank you very much, sir. Sri Piyush Khandelwal, Dhanyavad, sir, for everything. To our online viewers, thank you for taking this time and thank you for taking this time and having time with us this evening. Please visit our Facebook page so that you'll be updated about all cultural activities organized by Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center in Durban. On that note, you are such a wonderful audience. Thank you very much. Namaskar.